In this episode, we take a closer look at growing grapes and growing a grapevine. Grapes are iconic. Everybody likes to see the grape leaves with huge bunches of grapes hanging down. They're very attractive, but they are also incredibly vigorous. This plant was pruned back in late March before the buds burst. It's now put on huge side growth with laterals growing 3 and 4 feet, and it is covered in bunches of grapes. The trick here is we've now got to tame it, and they grow just as fast as wisteria and need similar handling. This plant was put in the ground 4 years ago. You can see here there's 4 branches that were trained up, and I put the clippers in this shot to give you some idea of scale. Each branch has been sent left or right, and that is what we want to cut back to. When it comes time to prune your grapevine or your wisteria, get yourself organized. Get yourself a good ladder. This is the A-frame ladder, which is very stable and easy to move. And then make sure you get your clippers that are sharp. When it comes to pruning, don't expect to make every cut perfect. It's just not going to happen. What I do is I tend to cut a few branches to let me see the main frame. Then I might go back and further cut that branch a little bit closer and more accurately. So don't be afraid to uncover what it is that you want to do. Here you see me working at a crazy pace. Obviously I've sped the video up. What I really want to make clear here is that you don't have this very rigid way to prune, in this case a grapevine. I'm going in there, removing very obvious long branches that in this case are hanging over the sidewalk, and I'm quite ruthless, and I'll chop away so that I can then see what is underneath all that growth, what grapes are left, and where the strong brown laterals are growing. What I'm trying to do is leave 2 or 3 bunches of grapes per lateral, but I'm also making sure that I remove a lot of foliage. I would think by the end of this process, 30 to 40% of the foliage is gone, and at least 30% of all the grapes have been cut off. Now what does that do? Obviously it makes the job a lot tidier. It's not as invasive, and it's not growing out over the sidewalk. There are many other benefits. By removing all the foliage, I'm now letting sunlight into the main frame, those thick brown stems that you can see at the top of the fence. And that sunlight really helps ripen the wood and make it tough to survive through the winter. And also that helps it set fruit next year. But by removing so much of the foliage, that means that the plant is not going to be transpiring as much water. So the plan here is that the water that the roots can take up can now go into those remaining grapes and hopefully make them swell and become a full bunch of grapes. Now the second reason for removing all that foliage is that now more light can get to the grapes, and that sunlight is absolutely what ripens them. In previous years, the grapes have had a good set, nothing quite the volume that we have on this year, but they're sour and they're thick-skinned, and the reason for that is that they just haven't had enough sunlight. So this year, with this heavy pruning in mid-July, I'm optimistic that I can get more sunlight to the grapes. There'll be more water available to go into those grapes, and hopefully we could have some sort of picking where the grapes might actually be quite tasty. I have thought about making some very strong rocket fuel bad white wine, which could be quite fun, especially when you get to grow your own grapes. As we move down to the far end of the grapevine, these are the branches the furthest from where the plant is growing. And I think what I want to do is continue 3 or 4 branches even further. So here I'm taking great care to select 2 or 3 branches of this year's growth that will be put on the frame and continue down the fence. So the mindset now is very different. Rather than cutting back all of the lateral growth, here I'm trying to very carefully select 2 or 3 laterals that will stay intact and then get put on the frame to extend the fence. It's a wonderful job. This whole thing took me maybe 20 or 30 minutes, start to finish. And when it's done, it just looks wonderful. And the comments I got from people as I was pruning this were very encouraging. And many of them were startled to see the amount of fruit that was uncovered under all of that growth that I had removed. So here I have a little bit of a wobbly camera. I'm very sorry about that. Still getting to grips with photography and how to make it look smooth. Oh, there we go. But we'll take a run down the fence line, and you really can see the quantity of grapes that are still attached to the plant. I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of individual grapes, thousands of grapes. And if they swell up and taste good, great. But I still think it looks very attractive. It's quite the talking point, and neighbors that walk by do like it. And then when you get to look at the amount of growth that was removed, it's quite startling that this is exactly what the plant wants. Thank you for watching Planted. Please like and subscribe.